Today, my guest is Anjali Menon from TBH. You are the CEO and co-founder of TBH. Can you tell us a little bit about what TBH does and introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Amit. Like you said, my name's Anjali. I'm the co-founder of TBH, to be honest. And we provide a virtual mental health platform for students from K through 12 all the way up to college.
So tell me a little bit about why the product matters. What do you guys do? I'd love to hear a little bit more, kind of the elevator pitch, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, today, one of the highest risks of a student's experience to succeeding at school is their mental health. Full stop. I think people often think that the number one thing when you go to school is your academics, but actually everything surrounding that, all the student support, whether that's your mental health or whether that's, applying for financial aid, all the things that go around your experience of being a student are just as critical to succeeding in school. So mental health is deeply important. And we got into this work because of a personal experience. My co-founder is from Stanford. He's a Stanford Knight Hennessy grad student, and we had a mutual friend who suffered with his mental health while he was at Stanford. And it just opened up our eyes to this world of what mental health is like, and particularly what mental health is like even at the most resourced institutions in the world, like Stanford. And so understanding what that experience was like, we said, well, this expands out to all students, not only at college, but even starting at the earliest ages from K through 12. And we said, we've got to do something about this. So we embarked on this journey of creating a virtual, cohesive mental health platform that would speak to students, but that would support universities and K through 12 districts.
That's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about, so do you work directly with the districts? How does the app get deployed out to people?
We do. So we work directly with the schools to implement this. And so we become an icon, on a student's dashboard where they can go in anytime. It's connected to their student systems. They merely fill out, a 10-minute sort of survey around their experience, and we get them connected to resources immediately. So they can connect with a therapist, a coach, and they can get connected in a variety of different formats, whether that's a group format, whether that's a one-on-one format. There's a variety of different ways that they can do that. And they can do that asynchronously or synchronously. So they can choose to talk to somebody live, like we're doing now, or they can choose to use some of our asynchronous resources. One of the best examples of this is something that we call Listen In, where students can actually listen in to pre-recorded anonymized therapy sessions. So these are for communities that maybe are like, therapy's not for me. Like, I don't want to start with a therapist. They can go in, listen to a session that's anonymized, and it's like a podcast. They can go in, they can listen to it, and they can say, wow, that's what getting help for, my mental health is like. Now I want to go find that provider on the platform. So we found all these sort of ways to really target students across the entire spectrum. Because if you're really building a mental health company intentionally, you need to build from the prevention stage all the way up to the escalation stage. And it's what I like to call, you've got to build for vitamins and painkillers. And you have to attack it across the entirety of the spectrum. So that's what we're trying to do.
That's really cool. How do you build a company that you have to sell to schools? It's kind of a different thing. I haven't actually experienced that. Your buyer is obviously different than your user. It's kind
That's
of an
right.
antiquated system. I'm
I
sure there's a
actually
lot
think
of
the
checks and
hardest
stuff like that
part.
through the process.
Absolutely. No, I actually think the hardest part when we first started out to build this company was, how do we build our website? Like, are we building a website that speaks to students, or are we building a website that speaks to university administrators and K through 12 districts? It was the hardest experiment of our lives. And so that was crazy for us. And what I would say here is, you have to do both. It sounds like a cop out answer, but you have to do both. Your payers are your school administrators, but ultimately the users and the people who are engaging with your product and the people that we built this for in the first place are the students. And so you've got to do both. And the best way that I can say this is, we've built products for both. For administrators, we've built products to support getting them visibility and to showing them, look at all the students that, we're servicing. Here's some data around who these folks are, all within the constraints of of HIPAA and FERPA and all of that. And on the student side, what we've said is, we are optimizing for students to get care, and particularly for students who otherwise wouldn't walk into their own on-campus mental health centers if they're lucky enough to even have that. So we're optimizing for finding students who otherwise would never have thought to get mental health, as well as the students who need help, but maybe they're on a wait list somewhere. And so for us, we're optimizing for engagement. Are you using us? Are you using us? If you're not using us, we're not doing our job.
Does it change the way you kind of build your team, build your company, set your goals and stuff when you have this type of customer?
So what I would say on the issue of, how does it change your company? One of the most fascinating conversations is when we were first raising for this company, we had a bunch of investors who told us, you're a B2B to C company, meaning you sell to these schools, but ultimately your end user are students. When you think about the DNA of your company, are you going to be a company that acts like a B2C company? Or are you going to be a company that acts like a B2B company? Because these two companies are exceptionally different, from the types of people you hire, to the types of marketing that you do, to the types of outreach that you do, to the types of founders that you are. So what type of company are you going to be? And I remember it was like the biggest existential moment for me and my co-founder. We're like, we were both like, what? And the answer was no. Like, what type of company are you going to be? And it is interesting because from the student perspective, we are a consumer company. Like, you log on to our platform and it's all designed as if it was consumer facing. It's like a Warby Parker style, like, aesthetic. But from the university perspective, like from a business perspective, we are a pure B2B company. We service those clients. So ultimately, at the end of the day, if I have to pick though, we service our students. We're a B2C company that just happens to be a B2B to C company. So that is
Makes
sort of
sense.
the DNA that we have.
That makes sense. So I'd love to hear from you. What makes TBH a great place to work?
I think the amazing thing about working at a company like TBH is almost everyone has a personal story for why they're working for us. I think like a lot of companies, they have to like really rally the troops to get behind their mission or to really remind them why some aspect of what they're doing is really good for the world. We don't have to ever do that. Like, people already come in with their own stories, with their own motivations. People are just motivated by the cause of what we're trying to do. I think mental health is one of the number one public health issues in America right now. And so, to the extent that you could work on anything, if you're working on one of the most pressing public health issues on the planet, and you believe that we have, some fight in this and that we have some value to give, it's such an easy thing to wake up in the morning and do what we do. And not only that, we get the benefit of getting all this feedback from our schools, from our students, from our partners, consistently telling us how much these sessions have changed their lives. To the point where we've even gotten students who have said, I've actually stayed in school just to ensure I get TBH mental health services. And it's the type of thing that you can't make up. Like, you can't make up these stories. And I think when you actually have real impact, it's very easy to keep people in the door.
That's awesome. That sounds really rewarding. Is there stuff that you do to kind of perpetuate, like when someone tells you we stayed in school because of TBH, do you share that with your team? Like, how do you keep everybody excited every week?
Absolutely. Again, though, because we are working in a very HIPAA regulated environment, we certainly can't be sharing names and,
Of
all
course.
that kind of stuff. But, within the constraints of what we can do, we always share, what we have with the permissions that we're able to get. So that's certainly one. And oftentimes we'll get video testimonials from our students and can share that broadly. But honestly, sometimes numbers actually speak a lot as well. I think people often think like you really need to hear the students' stories just from their own voice, which is really important. But the actual raw numbers tell a story too, because we survey all the students that end up going through our program, and we ask them a list of questions. But one of the questions that we ask is, have you seen a therapist previously, or have you gone on to your college or K through 12 mental health center, and have you seen somebody there? And over 50% have never actually done those things. So we are the first touch point a student often has with mental health for the first time. That's incredibly powerful. And to see the numbers of people that come through that are doing this for the first time, that in and of itself tells a really powerful story. And so at our company, we do highlight a lot of these stories through the numbers as well and make that very visible to our team.
That's awesome. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about your company culture, how you all work, and some of one of the ways I've heard company culture described is the behaviors that you reward and the behaviors that you punish. So what do you guys reward? What do you guys punish?
It's a really good question. I really have to say that within our culture, so first of all, we are a virtual company. We don't meet in person, and that has its pros and cons. But I feel like at our company, it's worked brilliantly. And actually, it's worked brilliantly because we have folks on the East Coast and the West Coast, and so it gives us the coverage that we need across kind of all hours. And so people can wake up at 6 a.m. for calls, and they're on the right time zone, and that works wonderfully. I will say from a rewards and punishment perspective, I always reward people for taking risk. Even if the risk like my risk tolerance as a founder is very high. And I want folks in our company to never feel like they will get punished for making mistakes if they have good intent around the experiments that they want to run. It is harder in the world that we are in because we're in a highly regulated world of therapy and coaching and all of this. So, you this is not a world where like all my employees can just cowboy and like run experiments willy-nilly. They have to do it within the constraints of you know the regulations and the field that we're in. But within that, I want people to be experimental because the only way that the mental health field grows is if you are able to say AI may be bad for mental health, but there actually might be good applications of it, and to not shut down things so easily. So I think from a reward perspective, to answer this succinctly, it is really experiment as much as you can. From a punishment perspective, really the only thing that I don't, my co-founder and I really don't like is when folks don't feel empowered to do their work and to take on new projects. Everybody at this stage of the company, everybody is an owner of what they do. There's no micromanagement here. If we bring somebody on, it's because you're smart enough to tackle that project. So from a punishment perspective, it's really just make sure you're owning what you do.
You guys are virtual, and you have people all around, at least the US. How have you I know a lot of companies that we work with have decided that on-site is what they're going to do now. Why do you still continue to stay virtual given that, the trend seems to be going the other way now?
Well, one, we like to buck trends. Honestly, I don't really care what like Silicon Valley companies do. And maybe that's like another topic, but like I care about what my teammates want to be doing. And I will say a lot of my teammates, they have families, they have kids. They need to drop their kids off at 3 p.m. It's fine by me. And it seems like the culture that we've created, the virtual environment works well. And for us, we're always 24/7 on Slack. That maybe doesn't work for other people, but this is where we live our lives. And it works amazingly well.
Are there things that you've done to make it work well, or is it just selecting the right people?
So I do think there is an element of selecting the right people. There is a certain category of people that thrives well in virtual, and there is certainly a category of people that does not. So I think we've sort of self-selected for the people that do. I think the other things that work is in our team, we actually have somebody who builds like Slack integrations and Slack bots, and he's like our company culture king. And he came from another company where he built this like photo bot in Slack. And so like every Friday, everybody takes a selfie and then like we vote on like who's the best, whatever. And we have all these sort of games that are built because he builds all these fun Slack integrations for us. That's helped tremendously. Just building more culture into the environment that we've said that we have collectively agreed is the environment that we operate in.
That makes a lot of sense. The other thing I've heard around kind of companies is a lot of times they take on the personalities of their founders. So what about your company has taken some of your guys' personality, your co-founder's personality?
Oh man. Okay. Well, my co-founder is very, very detail oriented. So I would say the company has probably like X'd their level of attention to detail because of how detail oriented my co-founder is. And from my perspective, I'm always on the cutting edge of like, what's this next thing that we could be doing as a company? I'm seeing this trend. Where can we go, and can we be first mover for our industry in ed tech around this thing? So I think from a company culture perspective now, we have a channel where people are always like, oh, Anjali would be really proud of this new AI integration that has come out. Maybe we should integrate that into, this thing that we're doing. So I'm really proud of the fact that I think people now are very into kind of looking at the future, seeing future trends, and trying to figure out if those things will be relevant for our company.
That makes sense. That's cool. You referenced this a bit. You try to buck trends. So give me some of your takes, some of your contrarian takes about, company building, about building teams, about Silicon Valley in general. Love to hear them.
So I think I've learned so much in building this company, and I thought I knew a lot because I have worked at Silicon Valley companies for far too long. I was an executive at a company at If Only. I was on the team that sold the company to MasterCard. I was doing all the diligence calls, flying back and forth to New York. Before then, I worked at a Y Combinator company called Magic, and I was their head of operations. We built the operations in the Philippines. I worked at TaskRabbit. I worked at Twitter. I mean, I've worked at so many of these companies. I still feel like I was so unprepared to start this company. One, because I've never sold to ed tech before. And it's a very different ball game. Like so many of the things that you learn with traditional tech just kind of don't apply to ed tech. And I can go off on a whole thing about that. I would say though, the biggest things that were eye-opening to me as someone who had to go out and raise funding for the first time ever and like raise millions of dollars, this was my first time doing that. The thing that I have learned is that there is so much smoke and mirrors in this game of fundraising, and there's so much more into this game of building hype than I ever imagined. And I think, and this is my contrarian and hot take, but I think that founders that fall into this trap actually don't do themselves a service. I think that they actually end up fielding a lot of mental health insecurities and issues because they've gone out and raised massive rounds and then are like, well, now I got to prove myself. Now I got to go actually build this thing that I sold lots of people on about the vision of. And I really do think there's this rat race in Silicon Valley of like, I got to be like, I got to be this type of company with this type of investor. And I've got to do that. And I've got to double, triple every year. And yes, there are certain companies that need to do that. But like, you don't need to get your whole self-worth off of that. And I think a lot of people think that they do. So my contrarian take is you can actually just build a company the way you want to build a company. And that's actually how I'm building TBH.
How do you do that? I find that a lot of founders need some level of, illogical belief in kind of their vision. Because like realistically, if you wanted to optimize for happiness or time or money, being a founder is probably a stupid decision. Yeah, exactly.
You literally wouldn't start a company if you wanted to optimize things.
So how do you do it? How do you kind of go across that trend? I mean, buck that trend.
I think the balance here is like, you can build a company with like profitable margins, for example. Go figure. You don't have to go raise $50 million and then like struggle and like be very stressed when like your valuations don't really meet the rounds that you raised. And I think I have seen so many friends do this where they struggle once they have played this hype game to actually build the company that they went about hyping. It's not to say all companies are not like this. There are true companies out there that really, really like are worth every cent of that hype. But too many founders fall into this category. And the thing that I would say is always go back to why are you building the company, and build the company the way you want to build your company. We raised the seed round. So we've raised, pre-seed and a seed round. But like, if you don't want to be a unicorn company in a year, you don't need to go pretend like you want to go do that just for some validation. You can actually get profitable margins. You can build it slowly. You can build it the way that you want to build it. And then you can decide, maybe I want to go down this route or that route. But I think too many young founders believe that there is only one path to success. And that's just incorrect. And it causes way too much mental friction for young founders.
That makes sense. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you all select talent. Are there things in particular, maybe the one or two top like qualities that you look for when you're interviewing or searching for candidates?
Resilience. Number one is resilience, man. Like if I could like do this all over again, it's not like what's on your resume. It's not how much experience did you have. It is, are you prepared to be on the ground and like fight for this cause when there will be 30 million things coming at you that go wrong? How resilient can you be and how committed can you be to this cause? Like, I don't need you to stay for years and years, but I do need you to believe that what you're doing matters enough where when, the ship tumbles on some stormy seas, you're still there. And that has been the number one thing I'm looking for now.
How do you find that? Because you're not going to see it on a resume, like you mentioned, and you can only get so much information before you're wasting time on interviews and stuff. So, what do you guys do to efficiently figure this out?
Well, part of it is if somebody has had a career in the past, is understanding how long they've been there and understanding like, were you there through tough times? So that's certainly the advantage of people who have worked in industry a little bit longer. For some of the younger folks, it's actually just like actually a simple question is, talk to me about a project that was really hard and how did you navigate through that, and what, like, how long did you navigate through this problem? Understanding just like a project that somebody went through and understanding the steps they took and the roadblocks that were there and how they navigated it is like a good proxy for understanding how long somebody is willing to be there.
And do you do anything different in your hiring process compared to the companies that you've worked at previously? Have you learned anything from those processes and applied them here?
Always, like, I think don't over index on how personable somebody is. Like that, I think that's a trap a lot of like companies fall into. Always make sure that the role that you are that you are interviewing somebody for, there is actual real world examples of you testing them for a scenario they might end up in. So with every single role that we have, whether it's an engineering role, whether it's an operations role, they're always going to role play, and we're always going to give them an exercise to do that would be something that they would experience in their first, let's say, month of being on the job. I need to understand how you're actually going to tackle things. Show me action, less words.
Are there things that you do to reduce? Because, if you look at the research, it's like how attractive somebody is, how personable somebody is. It's like, yeah, maybe it doesn't hit you right away, but somewhere in your subconscious it hits you. Are there things you guys do to kind of push that off?
So part of it is making sure different teams have input in an interview process. So even if, it's just the marketing team that is hiring this person, engineering needs to talk to them because you don't want biases. Now, of course, the way you weight these interests is different, right? Like marketing's team obviously has more of a weight than what engineering is going to say, but you need these other teams to counter your biases. The other thing is we actually do have a very like rigid rubric here where everybody is rating and ranking like in an actual spreadsheet based on actual, sort of metrics that we're looking for. So everybody goes in and we total these. I mean, like we do this very, very rigidly.
Is there things that candidates can do to stand out either at the beginning of when they apply or even during the interview process?
Oh my gosh, if they go even like one step beyond what the interview is asking, it's already a shoe-in. Like if somebody reaches out to me and is like, hey, I know your job description was for an operations lead to manage therapists. I already put together a playbook for how I would do this. Take a look at my Notion doc. If you are already showing me the work that you are going to do on day one, it's already a game changer. I don't need to see how nice your resume is, and I certainly don't need to see a cover letter. Those things feel very like archaic to me now. And similarly, I don't need to talk to you for 20 minutes to get like, a sense of like your worldview. Like I actually just want to see how you might handle and think about the problem.
Does anyone do it? Like, has anyone surprised you with this stuff? Oh, that's awesome.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And we'll actually even get like, we've gotten folks who've been like, I just want to intern for you. Here's what I would do
That's
during
cool.
my project. And then they would actually give us like plans. These people are amazing and they exist.
So as we go into 2025, are there things that you're excited about, worried about, some of the big things that could be big milestones or big challenges coming up?
I would say this. I think mental health is always going to be a big challenge for us as humanity. Irrespective of like, let's say political factors or let's say, world events, like at the end of the day, understanding your mental capacity to deal with life is a thing that humanity will consistently try to figure out how to get better and better at. What I'm excited for is there's a lot of new tools that can help us do that in ways that previously we might not have been able to do. AI is certainly one example of having these like tools that can maybe better start to understand you, better start to give you a 24 sense of who you are, supplemental with therapy. But there's certainly other pieces of this that are really, really interesting going forward. And I think these like AI chatbots and like, AI assistants are just one small piece of this. I'll give you a really concrete example. Stanford University is doing a lot of work around mapping kind of the cells in your brain to figure out if they can reverse course on some of the neural networks, the firing of neural networks. And if they can and they can change it, they can actually change the way your brain is wired, and they can make legitimate progress through precision technology on changing course on depression in a way that we couldn't previously with just giving you antidepressants. There's
That's cool.
so much in this world of technology that is going to be personalized and is not going to say one size fits all for everyone. That's amazing. I think the things that are scary are like, we've been at this mental health challenge since the like dawn of the century, and there's been an Cambrian explosion of mental health apps ever since COVID. And the truth is, there hasn't been like an Uber of mental health. It's actually like not a secret among venture capitalists that there hasn't been like amazing mental health companies that have come out in this space from a venture perspective. And not only has there not been an amazing breakout mental health company from a venture perspective, there also hasn't been like an amazing breakout mental health company that has like drastically changed the course of the way we think about mental health. Of course, there are solutions that help with mental health, but drastically changing the course of how people go about their lives with mental health still hasn't happened today. So it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity to say that even though there have been thousands and thousands of mental health applications that have come in, there's still such an opportunity, even though it feels brownfield, to actually make a change in this space.
Well, thank you so much, Anjali, for your time. It's been really interesting to hear about your company and what you guys are looking forward to in 2025.
Thank you so much.